Good evening, everyone. Welcome to registration for the 2020-21 school year, which I know it seems crazy that you probably never thought your student would get to this point to be in high school, but here it is. How many of you have had students in high school before? Yay, so you've been through this, you kind of know the drill. I myself just got my middle son registered for high school up in Maple Grove, so I feel your pain. It's a process, and you have to kind of know what you're getting into, and that's what we're here for tonight, to answer any questions you have and to go through a lot of information. I'm apologizing for my voice. I was sick Thursday, Friday, and it carried through to the weekend, so I'll try to hang in there here with my voice and not cough too much. So this is for the class of 2024. We're excited to have them here next year. My name is Barb Nelson. I'm the 9th grade counselor. I've been in this position for really way too long, over 20 years, and so it's been kind of a journey, lots of changes at the high school, and again, we're excited to have your students here for the next 4 years. You'll get used to seeing me because I end up doing the 8th to 9th grade registration as well as kind of the 9th to 10th grade. So I'll be in the registration meetings and then orientation in the fall, so helping you get your students ready for life at the high school. Right now, and my contact information is up there, so if you ever do have questions, definitely feel free to reach out. We're recording this tonight for Park TV. They're going to put this up on the TV station, as well as we'll make some videos to have on YouTube. If people aren't able to be here tonight, they can watch at home, which is great. So again, my contact information up there. If you need to be in touch, that is the best way to do it. Nancy Yeager, who's our counseling secretary, is always super helpful as well if you ever have quick questions and can reach her, but I definitely try to get back to everyone within 24 hours. So feel free during this process to reach out. And really, I think I probably said to students in the videos they saw today in their science class that right now, talking to their current teachers is going to be a really good resource for you as well in terms of kind of looking at placement for classes and trying to figure out the best options for your students at this point. And really, we are just making choices for 9th grade, so it's nice to just think about it in one-year terms. We just register for a year at a time. The nice part is that we do have, and I just have made a couple copies, but they are on the website as well, that if students are long-range planners or you want to pencil some things in, there are these planning worksheets online that you can kind of lay out in all the different core content areas as well as electives, kind of what you students might be interested in doing over the course of 4 years. We will be back with students, or we'll be at the middle school on February 26th out of their science classes. That's when they actually hear the presentation. All of the counselors are over there. We meet with them in the computer lab and go through the process of registration. They get a similar presentation to this, more specific to them and learning some things about the high school, and then being able to register or put their course request directly in PowerSchool. So we give you a couple weeks to kind of think about things and be able to input that registration into PowerSchool. A few things just about the high school if you are not familiar, as a way of orientation. We operate on a 7-period day and are on a semester-based system. If you've been around the district for a little bit, you know over the last year they went through a time study. The start time, as I understand it, for next year is going to be 8:25. We've been on a different system where Monday, Wednesday, Friday, we've started at 8:20. Tuesday, Thursday, we've started at 8:40. So that is changing, and I believe they're going to try to start every day at 8:25, and then we would end at 3:15. There will be more information about that as we move forward. I know it's a bigger shift for both the middle school and the elementary school, but the high school is staying pretty similar to what we've done in the past. There's also, just in way of kind of thinking about the future, next year our schedule will stay the same, but I know there is a committee made up of district people as well as parents and other stakeholders to be able to look at the high school schedule overall and if that may be changing. So more to come on that. I know there's a couple different types of schedules they're looking at to try to fit some intervention time during the school day. We do ninth graders that are blocked together on kind of their team, or what we used to kind of call block, if you've heard that term. So students will have the same social studies, English, and science teacher typically all year long. Math can be the same teacher, or it can be a different teacher, and that's all based on kind of the schedule, because math is one of the courses that isn't technically kind of blocked or teamed just because kids are at different levels. So we'll talk more about that as we get into course selection. If your student has special education, they would have a case manager assigned here at the high school. That transition starts later on in the spring when we work with the case managers to make sure course requests are accurate for what they need for the high school, and then they get the support and transition in the fall when the case managers are assigned here at our building. We will have a big freshman orientation in the fall, and then typically that same day in the evening have a parent and guardian registration. The way I know that the calendar is, Labor Day is very late next year, so I think we start school late, so I believe orientation usually falls on the Wednesday before school starts, so it'll be, I think actually in September. I don't have the date offhand, and we haven't finalized it, but typically it's the Wednesday before school starts that we would have orientation in the morning for students, where they come in, get a chance to get a feel for the building, do a little bit of a scavenger hunt, find their locker and their classes, and have an activity fair kind of to kick off getting back into the school year. And then that day in the evening at 7, we would meet again. I know that in the fall, the auditorium as you're sitting in now is going to be under construction, so it's likely that that'll happen in the old gym, because that would be our next largest kind of facility to hold all the parents that typically are in attendance for things like that. The course catalog has been updated on the website. Every year we go through a process with department leads to update and make any changes or corrections to course descriptions. So any of that can be found now under it's a /HS registration, or if you just go to the high school website and under students, it's the top thing there, 2020-21 registration. So that's where you can find all different information about classes, class descriptions, pathways, and so on. And then we will be talking about, as we get into things a little bit later, honors classes as well as advanced placement and international baccalaureate. If you're not familiar with those programs, typically AP and IB are thought of as, they are more rigorous, and they're the ones that students can have the potential to earn college credit depending on how they do on a test that is at the end of a year in the case of AP, or 2 years in the case of IB, or it'll be, sometimes there's classes that are 3 semesters in IB that you would be tested at the end of those, the 2 years in the spring. So more to come on those. And typically coming in as a 9th grader, there isn't a lot that you need to know about those. It's more going into 10th grade and then 10th to 11th where some bigger decisions need to be made if students are going to be taking more courses in those different areas. A few weeks ago, I guess it was probably about almost a month ago now, there was a packet that was mailed home. And so I know the graduation requirements were sent home. This is also available on our website. I wanted to avoid trying to have the paper shuffle out here. So hopefully you can find things at your fingertips on the website, or that were given at one point to students. I know there's an elective sheet that we handed out to them today with descriptions of all the elective courses. So this has all the graduation requirements in it for students. As we start to go through and we really kind of talk this through with students, that 46 credits are what's required for 9th grade. That's 46 semester credits. Students earn 1 credit per class per semester. Study halls do not have a credit with them. If you are a student who has special education and you have a skills class, those skills study halls do have a credit attached to them. But typically if students are earning a D- or above in any class, they would earn a credit. And over the course of, if we stayed with a 7-period day, let's say throughout, if students earned 12 credits each year, so we have a 7-period day, so they could earn up to 14 per year. If you earn 12 each year, you'd earn 48, which is 2 more than you need to graduate. So technically, students can have a study hall every semester, the way the schedule is built now, and still be able to graduate on time and get all their credits. I always have freshmen coming to me like after first semester, and they're all worried when they end up having a study hall, because typically if students have a full year of music and world language, they wouldn't have a study hall. But otherwise, if they have an elective that they choose and maybe world language all year, they typically would have one semester of a study hall. And kids get really worried that, oh, I need to get all my credits, I need to get all my classes. And it's not set up that way. There is time built in where kids can have study halls and be able to still earn all their credits. So hear that loud and clear that there is time built in for that. Certainly as kids go into the upper grade levels and those that want to take on more credits can do that. There's also kids who will come and see me halfway through the year at the semester change, and if there's an opening in a class, they can certainly go into it. We just don't staff the building for all ninth graders to have a class every hour of the day. That's why there's that study hall kind of built in for one of the 2 semesters. So with the 46 credits, how it is laid out, with English and Social Studies, and I know it's hard to see up there, but if you've seen that paper version, you have 8 credits of English and Social Studies that are required. That means a student is having English and Social Studies every semester that they're here, and there's curriculum kind of built out. I think my little pointer works here. So English 9, 10, 11, 12, and then there's varying levels. Students can choose honors or go into an IB class eventually, and the same holds true for the content areas in social studies. There's laid out curriculum, and that's based on the state of Minnesota. There's standards that students need in each of those social studies areas, so they are able to get what they need by following the progression of classes. And again, there are options built in, either advanced placement or IB, as the students go through the different levels of courses. With math and science, it's 6 credits or 3 years of each of those. Probably 85% or even more of our students take 4 years of each of those. It really is student preference and what they're thinking of in terms of preparation for after high school. Again, you can get through your junior year and be done. But again, if most students are going to look at further education, they want to get the most math and science they can while they're in high school. And there's great classes as you go through all the way. One of the things I'll just kind of note right now with that, in each of the different core content areas on the website, you can find the pathways, and this is the example of the math one. So it will show, if you're starting at this class, what is the progression as you go through. A typical ninth grader coming in would start in geometry. If they do okay in geometry and they're just fine on their math skills, they might go on to advanced algebra and then pre-calculus, and then choose to go on to one of those in their senior year for their 4th year of math. If they come in as a ninth grader and are struggling in geometry, then intermediate algebra might be an option that they would want to do, and a teacher might recommend that just to kind of get their algebra skills to a higher level before going into advanced algebra. What the state says is, for math, anyway, 3 years of math through advanced algebra or equivalent. So this gets them through that advanced algebra as an 11th grader. A lot of kids are on higher levels than that. They're starting in honors geometry or honors advanced algebra and pre-calculus, which the name has changed now on here. And then they can kind of go from there. And a lot of the higher level classes, it may depend on what your end goal is. I know I've had some conversations with parents already about that, and they're kind of wondering, well, why, if they're taking honors advanced algebra and pre-calc, are they taking AP stats? Why wouldn't they want to go right into AP calc? And it has to do more with the testing that happens later on. Oops, my little pointer's not working there. When you get into these higher level classes with IB, for example, you cannot take those tests, the exams, as a sophomore. They can only be taken in your junior or senior year, so there has to be that gap, which many times what students will do is do AP stats, then go on into the AP calc and go from there. So it gets very complicated, you can see, and that's why I really encourage you. The math department has done a better job working with both the middle school and high school teachers to kind of have that kind of flow from the middle school up to the high school and knowing the math sequence. So talking to your teachers now about where students are at, whether it's math or in the science, English, social studies area, to help students determine kind of looking at that honors level placement at the high school level. Oops, I'll go back to the classes here. Science, just a note, it's 1 year of biology, 1 year of chemistry or physics, and 1 year of an elective, which typically for most students is their science 9, or if they choose to take AP environmental science. So they're getting through their 3 years and then having a choice that 4th year if they would go into like going on. Typically, they would take chemistry as a sophomore, biology as a junior, and then physics as a senior, the way our progression works. Health students have 1 credit of health that's required over 4 years, and how that looks is right here. We have an embedded health program that was started several years ago. And the nice part about this is that curriculum is presented at age-appropriate or developmental levels. And so in 9th grade, students will be seen 3 times, kind of think of that as fall, winter, spring. The same things happens in the sophomore and junior year. And then in the senior year, they're seen twice in the class, and then they also do CPR certification. So it's 0.25 of a credit that they earn per year to give them 1 credit by the time they graduate for that health credit. And then there is a Phi-Ed credit, 1 credit that's a 1 semester class. There are going to be some new Phi-Ed electives with the opening of our fitness center, so that's fun to look forward to for the kids to do, like a strength and conditioning or advanced strength training class. There's a recreational sports, team sports, so there'll be some fun electives that kids can do in that Phi-Ed area after 9th grade. Those just count towards electives if students take them. They just have the 1 credit required in Phi-Ed. And then fine arts, there's 2 credits required. That ends up being anything in that fine arts area. If your student is in music, band, orchestra, or choir, those classes count. There's a couple other music electives. There also are, any of the drawing, painting, pottery, as they go into the upper grade levels. Excuse me. Photography, so lots of different options. Media arts, we try to give them a variety of things that they could utilize to fulfill that fine arts requirement. So 2 credits required by the time they graduate. If they go above that, those additional credits just count towards the electives that they need, towards the 46. ICL, Information Communication Literacy, is a computer-based class that 9th graders are required to take. So it's kind of looking at all things computer-based. Students are doing the Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint. They're doing some programming. They're doing some presenting, all types of things. So it's great. And I know it's hard. Kids are in all different levels in their computer development, so it's really nice to have a class that at least levels the playing field and they know that they have these minimum skills. I was actually helping a student with some Excel assignments, and I'm like, I want to go back and take this class because there's things in Excel that I wish I knew how to do, and we walked right through an assignment step by step, and I was able to, do some different things on there that I've never known how to do. So it is something that kids will, moan and groan about, but it's good skills for them to have. Career and college readiness. So we have an advisory curriculum that happens. So there's 8 lessons over each year that then the students have, again, 0.25 of a credit per year that they earn 1 credit by the time they graduate. This is where one of the teachers that they have in 9th grade, their core teachers will be their advisor teacher. They deliver that curriculum that's given to them monthly, and they have to do a little reflection or something in the class, and that's how they earn the credit as part of that advisory. So it's kind of built in. There are things that we do in addition to that. For example, go into the ICL classes in the fall, and then I'll do it with the spring group to get them set up in Naviance Student, which is, some of them have, they remember they maybe had some exposure to in middle school. It's a college and career website where eventually all the transcripts are sent to colleges that way, but it's a great tool that they have a lot of information on there about college lookup. There's interest inventories, things that they are able to access at any time once they kind of get into the program. So it's a great way to give them a little intro into looking ahead to the future. And then the balance of credits is there are 12 that are elective, so student choice. They get to choose from all these different other areas to be able to do. And we did send home that sheet, as I mentioned. I have a few copies on here, but any of the electives you look at, it should show on the website what grade levels they're open to, and they're the 11, I believe, that are offered there. And this is besides world language and music. So there are those options, but then the 11 electives are listed there for freshmen. But as students get into the upper grade levels, this is an example of the career pathways at St. Louis Park. Kara Mueller has been really active as our college and career readiness coordinator. a few years back, we had tried to develop these kind of academies, and what it grew into is this pathways of study. So there are a few of these that are offered for 9th graders, but the majority of them are 10 through 12. And when you look in the business area, for example, it's not that you have to take classes in that order. Those are just all the classes that are considered under kind of that business pathway, if you will. And then that holds true for the engineering and technologies, health sciences, law and public policy, and media arts. And so some of them are more built out than others just because those aren't classes we had naturally, but it helps kids kind of look at, if I'm interested in a certain career area or pathway, here are some classes that I can take to be able to kind of prepare myself while I'm still in high school. This is just, again, the website where you can find the high school registration information. They actually were able to put that HS registration, which is great. So easy way to get right to that and be able to access all the descriptions of classes and look up grade levels if there's any prerequisites, and actually access a lot of other information that will be going through. The PSEO, IB information is on there. So a great handy reference to access if needed. So the pink sheet that was handed out to students today, and some of you may have grabbed another copy there, this is what we will need when we go back and meet with your students on February 26th. What we want you and your student to do is kind of go through and look at what are the different options. On the left-hand side are kind of those core course requests, and then on the right-hand side are the various electives. So on the left-hand side, you're choosing one each from the core courses. And one thing that'll hold true as we go through registration the way the schedule is now, whenever you see two boxes like that, the S1, S2, Semester 1 and Semester 2, students, when they go input their course requests in PowerSchool, have to check two boxes to get both semesters on there. That's why we're getting them into thinking whenever they see two boxes, it's a full year course. Whenever they see a class with one box, it's a one semester course, and that course could be offered first or second semester. Once PowerSchool, we input all of these course requests for students, PowerSchool has the job of actually building the schedule. So a student in their mind might be thinking, oh, I want drawing and painting first semester, this is gonna be great, and then I'll have my study hall second semester when I'm in track. And then they get put in second semester drawing and painting. That's the way it could be based on the schedule and the way PowerSchool kind of makes it work. Certainly if that's a question you have or something we can help take a look at, if it's an option, we could try to make that change. But a lot of it has to do with just when classes get full, when sections are offered, when teachers are teaching different things. Excuse me. And the really important part for you and your student to be looking at right now is just making good choices for registration, because we really staff the building based on what the student requests are. So if there were 30 students that wanted underwater basket weaving, I always use that because it just comes to my head as an example, and then in the fall, those 30 students come back and say, I don't want that, and I'd rather take pottery. Well, we've hired a teacher, assigned them to a section to teach that class. Hopefully they were already teaching something else here and that was their specialty. So that's what happens. It's like we can't have all these kids all of a sudden moving into different sections or different classes because we've already scheduled 1,400 students basically, in classes, and it's very disruptive when students kind of pick and choose and then want to try to switch everything. So again, making good choices and having some alternates, which we'll talk about that are on the sheet, is helpful, because when I come back to work in August, I'm working through typically about 400 freshman schedules to try to make sure that they're all get what they want, either as a first choice or possibly a second or third choice as far as elective, and that everybody has a solid schedule when they come for orientation. So Phi-Ed and ICL are marked on there, if you notice that on the left-hand side, and so those are something that everyone will have. Typically those are opposite each other. They would have them one semester and one the other. Sometimes, again, randomly, they might have them both in the same semester, and then they would have their two electives in another semester, in the second semester. And that's, again, just a function of kind of how PowerSchool looks at it and is able to schedule the students. And there are one of 4 different options for the electives. I'm just going to jump to this. So that's this was the handout that had all the different descriptions. We were trying to get creative and think of other ways just to help incoming freshmen understand all the different classes and make good choices. I know they're not necessarily going to read that, but it was at least to get something in front of them. We talked about having teachers do like video snippets or Flipgrid or doing some different things, but just didn't pull that together in the time we needed to get it in front of 8th graders at this point. So most of the classes are pretty self-explanatory based on the title, but there's a few that obviously you can read a little bit more about. A couple that they just opened up for 9th graders. One is DECA to try to increase the membership as students go through the high school. There's a lot of great business classes and marketing classes, so this can kind of get them in that pathway a little bit sooner. Another music elective, if you have someone that's into beat making and modern band, they're going to try to do a class there. Otherwise, most of them have been pretty standard. The video game design was something that got started this year, so a course for 9th and 10th graders as an intro again into that kind of business and computer marketing area there. And I think that's all for kind of some of the new ones. But again, most of them have been around for a little bit that students have had good success in 9th graders. And we really do try to limit what they can take in 9th grade. And then as they get into 10th, 11th, 12th, if you've had older students here, you know there's a lot more choice as you get into those upper grade levels. All right, for elective options. This is really important to understand because kids I know struggle with it, but conceivably, when you're looking at the 7-period day, right, they're going to have their English, social, math, science, and then either Phy-Ed or ICL. So that's 5 of their 7. The other 2 is kind of what becomes the options that you have behind me here. Option 1 is if a student is going to take a world language and a music. Stop there. You're done. You have a full schedule, both semesters, all year long. So you don't have to worry about anything else. Generally, for those kids, you don't have to put alternates down unless they do have maybe a second choice. But generally, again, we're going to get them into the language they want and the music. There isn't usually any issues with any of those students. The issues sometimes come into play where there's a conflict if they choose honors, for example, and then they're in a specific world language, maybe Spanish 7, that's only offered these 2 hours, and then band is only this hour, and then honors algebra or honors geometry is only this hour. That's sometimes where a conflict would happen, but usually I'm in touch with families if there is something or a decision that needs to be made. So that is option 1. Then when you get into option 2, 3, or 4, that is something where any one of those options, your students would have 1 study hall, okay? So they would be taking a full year of world language and 1 of the elective choices and a study hall. Option 3 is having music all year long and an elective choice and a study, which is already marked. And then option 4 is doing 3 of the elective choices and a study hall. Okay, so again, with languages, kids do not have to take a language, and in fact, some kids, the success rate with 9th grade is not high. If they don't have the academic maturity to kind of go into that and be ready to really put forth effort in a world language. The nice part is to start it in 9th grade if they haven't had it. Most kids are coming from the middle school with 1, but it takes up a full year of their courses. So if they take that and they have an elective, they would have 1 semester of a study hall. And this is where we get into those alternates. We would really like them to put a second and third choice for that alternate, for the elective. So if they don't get their first choice, that they actually will put it into Power School, and then I can see those kind of behind the scenes and can work out their schedule if there are any conflicts or issues as we go through. Same with option 3 and option 4. Just having a couple alternates would be nice, so if there is any concern or question of them not getting their first elective choice, we can kind of fill that in as they go through. I know on the left-hand side, just to get into the different courses, we kind of went over that a little bit, but with both honors, or all honors, social studies, and science, there are some options in there for honors. And so I know some of you, that might be something you're kind of wondering about and want a little bit more information. When you get into this, honors English is one option. It's either regular English all year or honors. There also are some levels for English language learners or special ed if that's something that is needed in terms of level. With civics, there's a change this year where all students will be placed in regular civics, kind of just in civics in general, and there will be an honors option. So what that will mean is throughout the course of the year, students will designate if they are going to do honors, and there will be 12 to 15 summative assignments as they go through that are at an honors level, and that would be the expectation that they would complete those courses and then have at the end of the semester the honors designation would be put on their transcript. So the hope is to kind of increase the rigor in the course and be able to have more students participate in kind of those honors level courses and have a chance to see what that's like and build up to possibly going into kind of the AP or honors level classes, IB classes as they get into grades 10, 11, 12. So that's something with the social studies, that's a change. With science, advanced placement environmental science is the choice for the higher level science in 9th grade. And this is probably the one, as the 9th grade counselor for the last 20 years, I can say that has been kind of the biggest sticking point. And I'm gonna be honest with you because I think it's good to be transparent. This is a hard class. It's at a 12th grade reading level. If your student doesn't wanna put in the work and the time and they're not an independent learner, where they're gonna be having to be assigned chapters to read and do the reading notes and study guides, then have them take regular science. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? AP Science is a class that's going to require a significant amount more of work outside of school, more outside of school reading at a much higher level. I would say comparing them to Honors Civics and Honors English, those are going to be tougher as well, but this definitely, because it has that AP designation, is just a little bit different, and we know that the textbook is written at a 12th grade reading level. And I say that not to scare anyone away, but I just hate when students don't make good choices for themselves. AP doesn't play into any of the IB chemistry or IB biology. You don't need that as a prerequisite per se. Some students, I think, in the past have felt like that's what they needed to do. If you're a strong student and you love the content, that's the biggest thing I would have your students kind of check themselves on. Are you interested in environmental science? Because you need to be able to read it and like it and understand it and be ready for that level of class. So it's a great class. Students do typically pretty well when they're tested. We hit kind of the national average with our kids that take it as 9th graders, and we have for the past several years. And that means that there's some students that do really well and some students that don't do really well, but that's all in the preparation. I can assure you that kids that do the reading notes and study guides do better on those tests when they take them. And it's the kids who think, oh, I'll be fine, I'll just read the chapter and not do any of the work, that then struggle and get C's and D's on the tests when they're not used to that. So it's something that would be a choice to kind of look at pretty closely. One of the resources I could point you to is collegeboard.org. That is the program or the company that oversees advanced placement. So you can go on there and find the course description. You can find sample AP tests. If your student signed up to take this class, typically what students do then is in May, they're taking an AP, an advanced placement test at the end of the course content to be able to potentially earn some college credit. If you know anything about AP exams and how they're done, they're scored on a 1 to 5 basis with usually a 3, 4, or 5 earning you some kind of college credit. Now that being said, it's up to the institution whether or not you would get college credit at any of the local colleges or universities. You can go online and typically find their policies for any of the AP courses to see what they typically give in terms of credit for an equivalent score. So again, it's a great course, but I really would encourage you to kind of look at your students' kind of course choices, course requests as a whole, because it really is more about your student and what kind of learner. Are they someone who can handle that? And people always ask me, I mean, there'll be people after this that come up, well, how much homework is it, if you take all honors? And it's so hard because I've literally had students who, all honors, they maybe said a half hour, 45 minutes a night that they studied and prepared, and then I'd have parents calling me and going, why is my student doing 4 hours of work a night? So it runs the gamut, and your student and kind of the level of involvement they have in activities outside of school as well, which I think is a big part of it. You need to have that balance and really think about, how can I get that? Well, taking the highest classes or the most high-level courses that you can do well in. One thing too with any of these honors, advanced placement or IB, if you don't take any honors in ninth grade, that doesn't hold you out of any of those classes later on. We aren't tracked in that way. If students don't do honors in ninth grade for English, for example, they can self-select into that as 10th graders. And I think that's a really good thing about St. Louis Park, that back in the day when we had this application process, we'd have 3 sections of honors, and then inevitably in 10th grade we would have 5 sections. So there were approximately 60 more kids that kind of stepped up to that challenge as they went into 10th grade, and they were ready for that and were able to do that. So again, it's more about kind of that balance and looking at the big picture for your students to kind of determine where they want to be as they go through high school. We used to look at, when we had this application process, so some things for you to look at if you haven't taken a closer look at test scores. NWA MAP testing scores, typically reading and math are good predictors of success. If students were for us, we used to say that the 80th percentile was a good kind of if they were at or above that. But really, there are kids that aren't good test takers but do well in a class setting, and then there's kids who I've seen that test at the 98th percentile that get D's in those honors classes just because they think they are really smart and they don't put any work into the class. So you still have to do homework. You still have to be able to pass the assessments and do what it takes in the class. So those are just some guidelines to kind of take a look at. We typically always have high numbers of students that are interested in honors. And so, again, it's just really, in the past, I think we've looked at, it's been 4 years now that we've opened up honors. If you did have older students years past, it used to be all or nothing with honors, that you had to take all of them or at the honors level or all at the regular. And so now I really like it that students can pick and choose. They can take individual classes at an honors or maybe just take AP Environmental Science if they're going to step up in that one area. So kids can self-select into those as ninth graders, and it really helps them have a balanced approach to their freshman year. So yes, if you do have questions on that, or again, I direct you back to those middle school teachers who know your students very well and can kind of speak to their abilities, and then just having that conversation. I know, like I said, I just went through with my 8th grader, and we kind of looked at, okay, what do you do after school? What are your sports? What do you have going on? How much do you want to push yourself? What are those things that are going to get in the way? And what are we going to be happy about with grades? If your student's someone that cannot sit well with a B, they're used to having all A's, well, that's a discussion to have. How about you as a parent? Are you going to be okay with your student sitting with a B if they're putting their effort into a course? I think those are all good conversations to have to make good decisions for next year. Oh, I found this question. And just the last piece in terms of honors, there are kind of times within the first week or so we do schedule changes, and then I know it's hard as students are transitioning. Sometimes we'll make some changes within the first couple weeks, but then we really go to the quarter or the semester. And if kids are waiting to that semester time frame, that grade would be a final grade, and then we would change them to like a regular level of a course, for example. And we had that happen this year with a few kids that it just wasn't a good fit with the AP Environmental Science. They tried to stick it out, and then we changed at semester to the regular Science 9. And then honors math is kind of separate from the process. They have it in both honors English and honors advanced algebra and pre-calculus. There's kind of a specified contract that kids have to complete things at a certain level. I know they were taking a look at it for next year. So it was going to be dependent on kind of the first test of the year, second test. If kids can't keep up with the rigor and level, there are recommended RIT scores. RIT is the percentile or the score that comes from that MAP testing. So look in the course booklet for those, the recommended RIT score for each of those. I believe it's up around 245 to be able to take those courses. That's what they've seen as for students who are pretty successful, because they go at a very fast pace, and the expectation is there that you're keeping up and being able to move on with that math. And if you can see on that math flow chart again, even if kids are starting in regular geometry and they go geometry, advanced algebra, pre-calculus, they can get through a pre-calculus as a senior if they choose to do that. They don't necessarily need to hurry to get through math at a faster pace or faster level, but there are certainly those students who are very high level in math and can handle that level of rigor as they go through. All right, this will be a time where we can answer some questions. Questions and all that would be applicable to kind of the whole group, things that you know that other people might be questioning. Yeah. No, that's a good question. She's asking about if you are in that music and world language, that just happens in 9th grade. After 9th grade, the FIED and ICL drop off. So they will have 2 slots as they go into 10th, 11th, and 12th grade to add those electives in. Yeah. Yeah, so civics, and figured I might get a few questions on that. I kind of reached out to the teachers, and again, their hope, and they actually have been somewhat doing this a little bit if there's kids in the regular civics class that can handle a rigor of a harder assignment. So what it'll be that everyone, all 9th graders will be put in 9th grade civics. And then as students kind of decide, and this is the part that needs to be kind of exactly formulated, but throughout the year there will be 12 to 15 more, not more, they wouldn't be additional, these would just be assignments, and the level at which they would need to complete these summative assignments would be at more of an honors level, a higher expectation in terms of probably the research that goes into it, whatever the assignment may be. And if students are on that track and they complete all those things, at the end of the semester when the grade is given, we're going to have a process to be able to indicate on the transcript that it would then say honors civics instead of civics 9. So they would be able to do that. Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to see that. So that's kind of, their hope is to, again, try to get more students that are doing honors or trying to kind of step up into those higher level courses as they get into the upper grade levels. So we'll see. A lot of it is kind of how it's taught too, doing more Socratic seminars in the classes, more discussion, being able to, utilize that and have kids use that as a springboard for some of the assignments that they will have throughout the year. Because like this, the last couple of years, they've done a Project Citizen. And so kids do it all, the directions are going to be the same, but I'm guessing the expectation for students at that honors level in terms of the research and what's expected on their boards and how they present it will be at a much different level. Yeah. Yep, so world languages are, every level is 1 year. So if your students are in Spanish, for example, at the middle school and they're completing Spanish 1 successfully, they would move on to Spanish 2 here. Anyone looking at a transcript following graduation, for example, would know that if students are successful and complete, level 2 and maybe 3 or 4, that they would have completed level 1. So there's kind of that understanding. And so each year is a level, and they, depending on what they've had in the past, would be going into the next level from year to year. The Spanish for heritage speakers is for students who have language abilities, maybe speak at home, but are looking for something a little bit different and don't fit kind of the traditional level of language. So they're trying that this year and are offering a year 1 and year 2 of that program. If your students are coming from PSI at Spanish 7 that they would want to register for, it goes Spanish 7, 8, 9, 10. And then typically in Spanish 8 is when they do the AP Spanish language test. And then in 11th and 12th grade, they would have IB tests for the language level there. I think it's a Spanish literature that they do. Yeah. Well, you know what? I think it's changed, and maybe you guys can help me. Have they had a full year or level in those 3 years? It used to be each year a level. Okay. This would be, I should have had a little conversation with our middle school, because it used to be that kids over 2 years would complete 1 year or level. So if that has changed, and so those kids would go into level 2 starting at the high school. If they are strong in the language, I would say definitely probably level 2 or 3 then, and the teachers can definitely help them. And I'll make sure to get back to my language teachers here to have a conversation back to the middle school to help them kind of place kids appropriately. And in fact, what ends up happening is after kids are put in their course request. We do have the teachers look over the list to make sure kids are placed appropriately, but that would be typically if they have done full years, they would probably be ready for level 3 then, I would say. And I don't know that any of them would be ready for level 4. We haven't had that yet, and so that'll be a conversation we need to get back to if they've had full years in those in the programming, how they do it now. Thank you for that. I'll make sure to yeah. Yep, so advisory is asking what do students do. So for us, it's once a month, and it's where college and career readiness lessons are delivered. So there's going to be, like in each year or grade, it's kind of like scheduled out. It's kind of more goal setting, and then in 10th grade, you go on to more career exploration. So there's kind of a theme for each year, and then you're kind of doing that. So it's to provide a baseline level of kind of career and college readiness information for all students. Good question. He's asking what percentage of students are in honors in, did you say science and, okay. I would, just off the top of my head, we have 2 sections of honors advanced algebra and pre-calc and 3 of honors geometry, not all of those being freshmen. So it's not a very high percentage that are in the honors, probably less than 20% maybe, I would guess. Science, there are 3 sections of AP environmental science this year. So we have about 370 something is the last I had looked. So 3 sections of honors is probably around, it's less than 90 kids because they're not over 30. They're around 30 maybe. So 90 kids out of the we started at 400 this year. So, less than a quarter of the 9th graders are in honors, or the AP environmental science. So that's good to know. Year to year, it can change, but that's been about average. Yeah. Yeah. She's asking about Naviance and if there's a parent account. We haven't gotten to that level, but typically what we have is parents just go in under their student account. So it's the same if you have been in it or your student had it in middle school, the last name, underscore first name, and their student ID, and possibly initials. It just depends on how that was downloaded. Naviance just did a quirky thing, though, where they reset all of the passwords, and we've yet to figure out. We have to get beyond that and kind of get students kind of to log in again and get their new passwords set up. So, yeah, it may not work. And actually, the middle school doesn't. I think the account was closed for middle school because they weren't using it. So I don't even know if, as a 8th grader, they'd be able to log on. If you have an older student, they would. Naviance Student, it's a website that is kind of career and college readiness information where they can do college searches, interest inventories, watch videos of different careers. It's great. There's a resume writing feature that is like slick as can be. They can put in all their information and press a button and it prints a resume. Probably different than you and I when we would like have a typewriter. I tried it when I explained it to the students. I'm like, you don't know how many hours I spent trying to format a resume and make sure everything lined up. And so it's much, much simpler. Other questions? Yeah. Good question. So she's asking about our grades weighted. So we do not weight grades at the high school here. I know that tends to become an issue or people have questions about it, but we haven't for years. Don't have any intention to, as far as I know. And really, when we work with colleges, they know with every transcript that goes, there's a transcript cover sheet that kind of explains our grading system, what classes we have, what levels of classes. So it's really kind of all-encompassing to them so they know and they can compare apples to apples. Colleges who weight grades versus, or high schools who weight grades versus don't, the colleges will kind of do what they need to do to be able to compare students. So we haven't found a reason to at this point to go into or get into weighting grades. Oh, she's asking, what does that mean? When you are taking an AP or IB or even honors class, your GPA is weighted at a higher level. You get more GPA points for taking an honors level course, thus making your GPA higher than a traditional, student who isn't. Some schools do it. They just never have done that, and so there's never been a reason really or a big push to do that. Great. Well, thank you for putting up with my voice. Sorry. I hope you have a great evening. And if there are questions, certainly feel free to reach out and we'll help you out. Thank you.